Welcome to another episode of the Kite Pod with me, Ruchater. In this episode, I'm chatting to Giel Vlugt, who is a big air rider from the Netherlands. If you've not heard of him, you've probably been living under a rock, but he rose to fame a few years ago now as the first person to ever land a double loop in kiteboarding. Kind of changed the way big air kiteboarding was at the time, and it's certainly changed his life as well. He rides for Core, and I've met him quite a few times in South Africa and on various trips, and he's a genuinely really, really lovely guy. Super passionate about his kiteboarding. This episode was actually recorded whilst he was waiting to get in the water. He spends up to 8 hours a day riding, so he is a man who wants to be on the water a lot. As ever, this episode is brought to you by our diamond supporters, and those brands are Core, Cabrina, Duotone and Ozone. We thank those brands for supporting us and making this possible. Also, if you're enjoying these episodes, please consider supporting the magazine. We've got links on the website. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. Supporting us really helps. We only ask for £1.50, and it just means that we can keep this project really independent and focus on content that we want to bring you. Without any more chat from me, let's get right into this episode. Enjoy. First question for you is, when did you first get into kiting? What was the first experience of seeing a kite, and how did it kind of grab you?
I was actually doing my education was becoming an outdoor teacher, so skiing, kite surfing, windsurfing, snowboarding, this kind of thing. And I've seen kite surfing, I've heard of kite surfing, but I live quite far from the sea in Holland, so I never really went for it. And then in school, basically, I learned when I was 18, we were taught to kite and how to teach. And then, yeah, that's basically how it started for me. So it was quite late to the party,
Yeah.
but I fell in love with it instantly.
Yeah. How was it that first time that you flew the kite? What was it that grabbed you from those other sports? You mentioned windsurfing and snow sports and other things. What really got you with the kite?
I mean, just the possibility to fly, because already in the first lesson, every time, because we had to go in pairs, and we were with a group of 30 students, I think. So every time our teacher wouldn't be looking, my mate would say, "Okay, you're clear," and then we would be jumping all the time. And then when he would look our way, we would stay on the ground and act like we're practicing. But both of us were instantly hooked to the feeling of flying and to jump and to feel weightless. And yeah, that's what definitely, for me, that's what grabbed me straight away.
Yeah, it's definitely an addictive feeling. I remember when I first picked up a kite 25 years ago now, it was like instant, from the first moment I put my hands on the bar, I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest feeling ever. And then when you start flying through the air, it's like, wow, light bulb moment from being a windsurfer for many years that this is a sport that's going to totally change your life. And when did it become more of a kind of professional thing for you? When did you realize that you might want to be able to, make something out of this and make it your job?
Yeah, so for 7 years, I was just teaching as an instructor here in Tarifa. And I was about 24 when I thought, man, I really want to try and become become a pro rider, or it would be a dream um, to get a salary from kiting every day, because I was teaching in Tarifa. Teaching is quite intense. It was like 4 to 5 months, but in summertime we would teach every day, and we would be teaching 8 hours a day if the wind would allow it. So sometimes for 2 weeks, it'd be 8 hours of running up and down the beach every day, 8 hours straight. And it was one of the toughest jobs, but just pure out of passion, I still loved it. Um, and then, yeah, when I started training a bit and kiting for myself, I thought, okay, I haven't partied pretty much ever. I wasn't a partier, I wasn't a drinker, I wasn't a smoker. So all the money I saved from teaching in the winter and in the summer, I would just save. Um, and then I thought, okay, I did some research. I have 1 year to train with the money I've saved from coaching all those years, and I'm just gonna train as much as I can. Gonna train my butt off and see where I can get within that year. And yeah, basically, I was kiting if I could 6 to 8 hours a day, as much as I could. I converted my van into a camper van. I slept on the spot here in Tarifa, and just as much as I could train, I would train because it would be more fun than coaching for 8 hours. So why wouldn't I be able to kite for 8 hours? And luckily, before I ran out of money, I got my first sponsor deal.
Yeah. And let's touch on the teaching in Tarifa a bit there, because I've been to Tarifa a few times. That is a hard spot to teach kiteboarding.
Yeah, I mean, if you
What was
if you're
your.
used to it, if you're used to
Yeah.
it, it's like it's all right here. But yeah, in the
Yeah.
end, it
But I
turned out to
always
be quite a
remember
tricky.
what's the instructors in Val de Vaqueros in in a Levante, and they're just doing laps up and down the beach with those students just disappearing and then coming back and then
Yeah,
disappearing and coming back, and all the kite tangles and students queuing up on the beach to have the little run and everything like that. It must be quite hectic. Did you enjoy it? Did
yeah.
you like get a lot out of it?
I mean, I kind of learned how to teach there. So for me, it wasn't the craziest spot to teach. For me, it was just this is normal.
Normal.
So
Yeah.
this is the way. And then I was teaching like a couple months in Mauritius, and I was thinking, man, this is easy. But it's all about. For me, it was always all about teaching the student in a way that whenever he or she gets to the next step, they're independent of the first one. So they have kite control before they start body dragging, but the kite control is good enough that they got this. I don't have to stand around and hold the bar or hold them. They've got it. And then when they body drag, they can body drag upwind so easily with and without the board that they're ready for a water start. So I would make my life very easy, and I would really feel like I'm not just making them have fun, but I'm teaching them kiteboarding so that when they go home and they want to buy a set and just go for it, they can.
Nice. What's your best tip for someone who's struggling to learn kiteboarding? So I know some people, I used to have a school as well years ago, and some people take to it really quickly and some people really kind of struggle with it. What's your best kind of bit of advice to someone who's struggling picking up the sport?
Just don't give up. Because for someone it might take an hour to learn something or 10 minutes, and someone else can take 10 hours. So, you're not in control of how quickly you learn something. The only thing you can control is to make sure you see it through to the end. So if it takes you 10 hours, it takes you 10 hours. It's the same for me now. I mean, it has nothing to do with a water start because that can take 50 hours, but it's the same with a trick, like a tornado trick. I'm still not doing it, and I've done so many, but I'm not bothered by it. It's just that's how long my progress is going to take. I'm gonna have to spend more time on the water than Lorenzo, who I think would just do it after the second try. Um, but there's no need to get upset about it. I mean, he's just more talented that way, or he's just got that trick easily. And for me, it's harder. So I'm gonna have to put more hours into it. But in the end, I'll be able to do it just the way he does it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. If you give, like with anything, as soon as you give up mentally, then you're never going to make it. If you've got that
Yeah, but
mindset just
just
to keep
it's
trying and
like
keep trying, then eventually you will get the rewards.
yeah, just accept that for you it might take longer because it doesn't
Yeah,
matter
everyone's
if
different,
you.
right?
Yeah, everyone's different. So just accept it the way it's going. Do your best and keep going.
So, who was the first sponsor you picked up? And after training for a year solid in Tarifa, where did you start traveling to?
The first sponsor I picked up was Core, um, where I'm with now. They were the first ones to see potential. Also, Steven Akkersdijk. He was a big part in me getting my first deal because he came to visit Tarifa. And I know the local store owner here in Tarifa, or the Core Hub manager. And he was like, okay, Steven's coming then and then. Make sure you're there and maybe have a chat with him or whatever. So we had a session here in Balneario with Steven. to kind of prove myself. So I was super excited to do my best. So I was looping a 10-meter XR6, I believe it was, or XR5, which is not really a kite. Back then, a lot of people were looping, but I thought, I have to give it everything. And then Core were the first ones to give me some gear, and then after a year, I would give it back, and we would see what the new deal would be like. So Core were the first ones to believe in me.
Yeah, that's a pretty good brand to get on board with because they're definitely one of the brands that was known for pushing big air back when big air was kind of starting out as a discipline. They really got behind it with Woo and Core pushing a lot of stuff with the GTS and the XRs in those early days and getting the jump height. And I know the guys and obviously met you a few times at trips to South Africa and various events and stuff like that. And it's always nice to hang out with them. They're a really good bunch of people behind the brand and, the
Yeah.
riders they pick as well are a solid crews. Where were you traveling to? When did you first do your first trip to Cape Town?
Oh, my first trip to Cape Town was probably 5 years ago. I just went for 3 weeks, but we
Yeah.
had, I think, 40 knots almost every day. Um, and I learned a lot there. And it was kind of the time that the first Kailu borders were done in competition. And actually, the first time I went to Cape Town was a bit of a turning point for me because I realized that big air is scary, but it's not necessarily super difficult. Um, I don't know. I'll explain that now. Everyone was doing Kailu board offs, and I just wanted a picture in Cape Town with the Table Mountain of me doing a Kailu board off. I had no intention of landing it, but then on the pictures you don't see if anyone lands it. So I just asked Martin Hager. He could do a Kailu board off. Then I think he was one of maybe 8 guys who could do a Kailu board off. Um, and I couldn't do a laid back. I could do a back row kite loop, I think, by that time. But not even a kite loop laid back or a boogie loop, something like that. And then I just wanted the picture. So I went up, pulled the kite loop, pulled the board off, extended so I would look good for the picture, and then threw the board away. And then I made a full down loop and crashed quite smoothly. And I was like, okay, that wasn't too bad. Let's do it again. And I did 2 or 3 more. And I was thinking, man, I think you can land this, which made no sense to me because all the pros were doing that. And I was, an instructor with a dream. Um, and then after, I think, 20 more tries, I landed a kite loop board off. And I thought, okay, I need to push this. I need to pursue this because I think I have the guts to try stuff. I think I'm hardworking and disciplined enough to really push, to give it a real push, and just see where it takes me. Because if I spend a year training and traveling the world and trying to do as much as I can to chase my dream, I can never be disappointed with myself because I went for it. I'll be disappointed if I never tried. So
Yeah.
that was the mindset going into it.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. There's a big fear factor with a lot of the big air moves, which is why I think so many of the young kids do so well because they don't necessarily have that fear because they're so much younger. And I mean, you're not an old guy at all. You're still super young, but
Careful, man.
compared to
Tread
some of the
carefully.
kids coming through, yeah, compared to some of the kids that are coming up, like you say, Lorenzo learns a move in two attempts because it's just a different kind of makeup. So it's pretty impressive to be to have that dedication and be able to put that fear in a box, if you like, and just be like, yeah, I'm going to throw myself and put my body through it. You were the first person, I think, to land the double loop as well. That was when you sort of really popped up on my radar at the magazine and social media was blowing up. How long were you practicing for that, and what was the thinking behind doing it?
Yeah, so when I moved to Ocean Rodeo, I came from the XR, which is not known to be a very quick kite, but very powerful, very lofty, very much just jump huge, and the loop is a bit scary. And then I tried a 10-meter rise, and I did a boogie loop. And then when I came out of the rotation, the kite was already on the side again. And I said out loud, like, man, I almost doubled that. And it's like, that's when the seed was planted, not because I wanted to, but because the kites were so quick. And that was a 10-meter. So I had it in mind for my first ever King of the Air. I said, if I make it to a final, I will try to loop the kite twice, like an 8-meter should work. But I never done it. I never tried it. Um, and then I got kicked out in the semifinal, so I didn't manage to try it out. And back then, I had so little competition experience that I was afraid to swap kites to lose too much time. So I didn't go for it. And then I think a month later, we had good conditions, and I wanted to do an S loop. I wanted to recreate the S loop the way I had it in mind, that it was going to be proper, where the kite would turn back right in front instead of bringing it back up. Because Andrea did an S loop, I think 2 years before that, but he brought the kite back up and nobody really liked it. So I had this in mind, and somehow on the same day, Andrea had the same thing in mind. So I did the S loop. I was happy with it. It was a proper one. And my girlfriend was on the beach and she's like, "Yeah, I heard Andrea also did one." And I thought, okay, today is supposed to be my day. Let's try that double loop and, let's just go for it. And then I tried like two or three where I didn't even try to land it. I just kicked the board off once I was in the air already, just to see like how far do I free fall? Do I stand a chance to land this? And then it's kind of scary because you have to get used to that free fall. It's a lot faster than with a single loop. And then at some point I was like, I think I can actually do this. And then stuck the landing, and I wanted to keep it secret for a competition, but it went viral on WhatsApp. Somebody filmed it and put it in a WhatsApp
Yeah.
group, and it spread so quickly that I had to post it the next day. But yeah, it was, yeah, that's when everything exploded for me, for sure.
I was going to say that must have been quite life changing to go from, doing a few events, being on the big air scene, but, no one really knowing your name. And then suddenly all around the world, everyone knows who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like I was starting to make a name for myself. I did good in some competitions. I got some podiums, but it was going quite slow, but I think that's the normal way. And then this happened and it exploded. And then I could use those
Yeah.
doubles for competitions and the move of the year and a rider of the year, and that was 2022, and that was by far my best year that I've had.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think just one trick that, technically the landing's really hard, but essentially it's just having a big set of balls to actually pull the trigger and go for it, right?
Yeah, and I mean the gear is important. And back then people were saying, "Yeah, but your kites are so quick." But my first double was on an 8 meter, and right now, even to this day, there's only a handful of people who've doubled at 8. Everyone's doubling sixes and fives, some maybe a seven. And my first was on an 8, so it was also like instantly it was a proper setup. Because I think if it would have been done on a 6 from the first one, it wouldn't have hit the way it did now.
Yeah.
It
It's a
wouldn't
lot
have
more
been as
consequence with a bigger
impressive,
kite,
right?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more pull involved and things like that. How
Yeah.
do you feel about the way that the sport's progressing in terms of competition? I know you've been competing a lot. You did really well at the Mega Loop, some huge loops going down there. How do you feel about the progression of the sport? Because it feels like the Mega Loop's kind of build towards more single loops and more height and the technical tricks that you're doing, and then you've got other events that are looking at more doubles and triples. And where do you think the direction of the sport should go? What's your feeling on it?
Yeah, I mean, doubles have completely disappeared from the radar. I think we should have maybe tried some more doubles at Cold Hawaii, but in Cold Hawaii, it was all about just going huge, going absolutely massive. And I loved that feeling. And since it was scoring so well, I didn't want to risk, if I would be scoring sevens going that high, I would have said, okay, let's risk it a bit. But I was scoring high eights, even some nines. And that's not really when you want to change your game plan. You want to stick to that and just get some massive scores. Um, on one side, I'm a bit sad to see that the doubles aren't scoring as much anymore. But now, I mean, if we're doing kite loop rotation, board off stuff at 27 meters, I mean, it doesn't get much more exciting than that, I think. And it's gotten quite difficult to understand the sport if the kite loops so quick, but you're not going high, and someone who's going absolutely massive is not getting scored. I think it's too difficult to understand for anyone watching. So I definitely think that the height should be scoring very well. So on one side, yeah, it's a pity because that's the move I brought to the sport. But at the same time, I understand that everyone wants to see bigger jumps and higher jumps and more power and more distance. And, yeah. that that's the way to go.
Do you think do you think we'll see the sport progress where, and the equipment progress where you're able to, get really, really high and pull, really critical doubles at height in the future? Is that something that you think might happen, or do you think it's kind of just moving away from that?
I mean, it's a tricky situation for a designer as well, because you need to create a kite that has a lot of boost to make sure you go 25 meters high, let's say. But you can't have too much pull in the loop, because then you won't be able to double it. Like, it will stall too much on the first one, and it's going to be too scary, too difficult, Like an XR is, I think, one of the best, maybe the best kite to go absolutely massive, but it's not the best kite to double loop, because it's got so much pull that if you keep pulling after the first loop, it's just such a delayed, loop, that first it doesn't carry any pull and speed in the second loop. So you're not going to get as scored as much, and you're going to get such a crazy stall that you don't know if the kite actually recovers, and you're in for a big crash. So I think it's a design thing. It is possible. I think in Cold Hawaii we could have been doing some ridiculous doubles. But yeah, nobody wanted to try it. Like, if somebody would have tried some really big doubles and it would have scored, I would have pivoted and go for that.
Yeah. I guess it's always chasing what the judges are scoring, right? It's a competition at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
I mean,
So you wanted to progress and do well. So you've got to look at what's doing well and go, okay, that's what they're liking. That's what we've got to do.
yeah.
And yeah, it's a
And it's
risk,
quite
like you
hard
say, to
to,
go
I
outside
feel
the
like it's
box.
quite hard to steer it. It's quite hard to steer the direction that the judges should judge. So I think it's easier to just look as you go, and as the competition happens, to just keep an eye out on what they're scoring and just focus on what they're scoring, do that. Not try to set um, what they should score yourself. That's what I've been trying for the last year, and it hasn't really worked out. And now I'm like, okay, what do you want to see? This? All right, I'll focus and I'll do that. Because obviously the doubles game is more my thing, but now
Yeah.
I'm pivoting to doing bigger single loop stuff, but still having power, and now adding technicality as well. And I think I could do really good on if I focus on that as well. I just have to make sure that that's where my mind's at.
Yeah. Yeah, the Cold Hawaii event was pretty nuts. It was
Yeah,
bonkers to see some of those jumps. It was so windy there as well. It's mad how windy it's getting at some of these events as well. It feels like there's a lot more energy in the ocean and in the sky. Like, I say that as we've just had a week of no wind and no waves here in Wales, but it feels like we're getting a lot more storms, and there's a lot more activity and a lot more opportunity for these sessions to go down and for these
yeah.
events to happen as well, which is really positive. Um, You've had quite a few injuries over your career, and obviously big air is fraught with danger, and it is a high risk thing that we've talked about before. What was your worst one, and what's your kind of method for recovery? How do you deal with it mentally and physically when it happens?
Probably my worst one has been my ankle. I injured it about, well, a little over a year now, and it still gives me troubles today. Like, if I do too much, or if I'm playing a lot of tennis and paddle, and it's like a lot of steps and weight shifts on the ankle, it gets quite tired still. Um, but I think it's important whenever you get injured that you give yourself a little time frame to feel sorry for yourself, to be upset, to to have all the negative stuff come out. I think it's like mourning the loss of someone that's close to you, something like that. You need to give it a spot, and really, accept that it is the way it is, and you can be upset, but then basically make a plan and stick to it, and do whatever you can, do whatever you can control, and let go of everything you can't. I think that's the biggest one, because it can feel quite
And then have you
helpless
got some,
to kind of try to control the stuff that you can't, but it's already there. You can't control it, so let it go and focus on the things you can do.
and do you have some good people around you for that recovery process? I know from personal experience, ankles are one of the worst things to damage because they're such a complicated part of your body. It's much, you can replace a knee, you can replace a hip, but you can't replace an ankle. Did you have a good team around you to help you recover quickly?
Yeah, like I'll surround myself with a good team. When I'm in Holland, I'm with my parents, they're physical therapists, And here in Tarifa, I'm with Kuro, who's a physical therapist. In South Africa, I have a trainer and kind of a jack of all trades in Ron Retief from Bound Fit. So I always make sure that I surround myself with people that I know can help me and have good skill sets and just fully trust them. Because I think that's another very important thing is that when the physio tells you to do a certain amount of exercises, do them. When he tells
Yeah,
you to do this,
that's
do it. Trust it. If he says it's for sure coming from this direction, don't think you know better because you don't. So it's like surround yourself with the right people, but also do exactly what you're told. Not don't try to fill in
yeah.
any answers yourself, because I think this is where a lot of people make a mistake.
Yeah. I think a lot of people rush to get back on the water as well, and try and think that they're fixed when perhaps they're not fully fixed. And I think there's a good argument for taking that time and like you say, listening to the professionals and following the physio and doing exactly
Yep.
as you're told to make sure you get a full recovery.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the equipment then, and the new XR Pro 2. The XR has been an iconic kite. You mentioned it was one of the kites you were using all those years ago, and it's still in the lineup, and everybody knows it really well. What's the design goal behind the new XR Pro 2? Because the XR Pro was such a huge seller for Core. It's been so popular. How do you go about, looking at what you need to change, and how do you go about changing it without losing that XR Pro DNA?
Yeah, I mean, it's that DNA that you spoke about is good to touch on because I think what you feel in a core kite, you don't really feel in any other kite, and we really want to try and keep that um, to keep that DNA. It's a certain type of bar pressure and backline pressure that you're like, okay, this is a core kite instantly, um, which allows you to feel the kite really well at any time. Um, but the XR was made to boost, to go absolutely huge, to set world records, to crush all your friends' records, and every time you go out, you're the one going the highest. That's always been the goal. It wasn't really made for looping, but that's why I think it loops well. I think in these competitions, you don't really want a kite that is very good at looping because that means it's not going to it's not going to create pull. It's not going to create slack on the lines. You kind of want a kite that doesn't want to loop, and you put that kite in a position where it has to. And I think that's where you get the most performance out of it. So the XR was extremely focused on jumping super high and not really on looping. And right now, what we wanted is to still try to get the kite to go a bit higher, but also increase the way, like the smoothness of the loop by changing some materials, by doing a couple fine tunes, changing a couple small things. Can't give away too much, obviously, but this year I would say with the XR Pro 2, they really knocked it out of the park. For me, it's an absolute game changer. Um, because when I spoke to Frank about it, he's like, "Okay, we just want to go higher." And then a couple weeks later, he's like, "Okay, I got it. We're going higher." But I think we can increase the hang time as well. I was like, okay, let's go for height and hang time then. And I mean, it's the XR. If people want like a really nice and comfortable loop, then it's the Pace Pro or the Pace, like that's perfect. We need to. And then a couple weeks later, he's like, okay, we got the hang time. Let's try to make it turn faster. Let's just try. Let's see if we can combine everything. And everyone always says like, oh, this year it's jumping higher, it turns faster. I've never experienced that with a kite where all of the above were improved, but on the XR Pro 2, all of the above were improved, and it's really cool to see and to ride. It just gives you so much more confidence to loop like a big kite. Before I would loop a 10XR Pro, and I would be like, okay, that's on the edge. Like it's nice, but it's okay. And now on a 10XR Pro 2, I'm training. I'm training new tricks. I'm landing new tricks on a 10-meter XR, and that's quite special. And that's yeah,
Yeah,
definitely a big difference.
that's a
And yeah, it feels like a different kite, but still has that same DNA.
And have there been any material changes, or the way that you've used any of the materials in the kite to achieve that, or is it kind of sticking with the same material used in the pro version from before?
I I believe the Alula itself, they had an update in the Alula itself. At least that's what I've been told. But I'm not 100% on that. I'm not quite sure what happened there. I know we had some kites ready, and then there was something with the material of the Alula that changed, something about the stiffness, I believe, and we had to kind of redesign the kite again. Um, I know we've made a couple tweaks, but it's not like we having a different kind of Alula on the kite that other people have, I believe. But I'm not
Yeah, it's the
100% on that.
same.
That's
Yeah,
more
I
of
know
a
they've been
question for Frank, that one.
okay. We'll pass that one to Frank. I know they've been looking at, updating the Alula materials, and there's lots of different stuff coming from those guys. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
was just interested to know if they'd embraced any of that. But it always takes a while to trickle down into the industry from what's coming out of the factory, because obviously they've got to produce it at scale rather than just, hey, we've made this material and it works for a limited run, but then they've got to actually up the production and get it out there.
Yeah.
You were heavily involved in the design or the testing for the Pace Kite, which is what we talked about last time when we were in South Africa. How involved were you with the development of this one? How much testing did you do? How many prototypes were you riding? Were you working really closely with Frank on it? Yeah, what was the process there?
I mean, in Cape Town last year, we were working quite closely on it, quite a lot, and then I got injured, and then yeah, it kind of goes um, a bit out the window because all of a sudden I couldn't really test until April again, and then it's almost time to make a decision. So I haven't been as involved as much on the XR Pro because yeah, I've been injured for so long. I haven't been on the water for a long time, and I had to make sure that the recovery was the most important thing. But I know they've been testing. They have a team there as well. There's other riders that have been testing, and the kite that we had in Cape Town was already like a big step in the right direction. Um, so yeah, I've been involved, but definitely not as much as on the pace because of the injuries.
Yeah, well, hopefully when it comes to, I'm sure there'll be a new version of the Pace in the pipeline at some point that you won't be injured and you'll be able to, put all your efforts into
Yeah,
testing that
we're
one as
already
well
working
and
on it.
working on that
We've been
one.
having some really promising prototypes. I'm super excited about it. I can't tell you anything yet, but there's going to be a real change. Let me say that.
In the pipeline. Yeah, I guess that kite's been around. It was what, 2023 or 2020, early 2024 when that was launched, wasn't it? Early 2024 that was launched. We were in Cape
Yeah.
Town in March, I think, and then that was when Core released it and we chatted. So yeah, it's looking at their release cycle. It's probably, yeah, I can see that's on the design board and being worked on. It'd be exciting to see. I really enjoyed flying that kite. It was a hell of a bit of kit. The when you launched the Pace, there was a new bar which allowed the Pace not to have any pulleys. Are you using the same bar for the XR Pro 2 now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And has the XR Pro 2 got pulleys on it?
yeah. It does, and it works the same. I mean, we needed to have a single front line safety, but at the same time, you want to be able to make it a low V and a high V because the core bar is such a trusted bar all over the world. I mean, you so often see a core bar on a duotone kite or on a Nash kite or whatever. It doesn't matter what brand of the kite, obviously, but just um, it's a very known bar, a very trusted bar, and I think this opens a lot of possibilities for people that prefer to have their duotone kite but want to have the core bar to complement that. And I think it's a really cool way. Um, Obviously, there's another line at the center, which in the beginning you're like, oh, why are we adding a line? I would love to take one line out. But you don't notice anything about the line, and it's giving you the possibility to fly it high and low V while still having a single front line safety. Doesn't matter if it's for a pulleyed kite or a fixed bridle kite. So even though the extra line is the first thing you see and you're like, not sure if that's the way to go, it opens up so many possibilities that, in my opinion, it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, makes a difference. It was yeah, remember using it when we're in Cape Town and not really being bothered by it. You know, first time you run the lines out, you're
Yeah,
like, "Oh, okay," and then when you're flying the
yeah.
kite, you don't notice it at all. Really, it doesn't really
No, it makes sense
come
that
into play.
the first time you run the lines that you're like, why is there another line? Because that was my thought as well. You know, I'm always honest to everyone, to the designers as well. If I feel a way about a kite or about a design or about the bar, I'm sure customers will have the same. And they were like, just try it out because this is right now the only solution we could have to really have that wide variety of being able to fly it on any kite with low or high V. Just try it out, have a couple sessions, and let us know. And then I also said like, okay, it doesn't bother me at all. I don't feel like it impacts anything in a negative way. It's just getting over the fact that there is just one more line, um, and that's it. I mean, you can close everything off in tubes and stuff like that, but then if something is wearing, you don't see it. So it makes sense to have it out there exposed so that if anything wears, you can just replace it before it's too late instead of having it in a tube and you think, oh, all is good. Let me take this out in 50 knots where it's about to snap. So um, I'm a big fan. I think it's a very transparent way of seeing how the gear is doing and if anything needs to be replaced because you don't know how people treat their gear. It's always possible that something wears, and then it's better to know that it should be replaced than to be to not know.
Yeah. And then the XR as a kite in general has always been known for like having a pretty massive wind range. Like it's got a good low end and an amazing top end. What's it like on the new XR Pro 2? How's the wind range on that kite?
I think the low end is definitely better. Um, and the high end, I mean, Cold Hawaii, I was riding the first 2 rounds on a 9 meter where everybody else was on an 8 meter, and I was still able to hold it. I mean, I think what the XR Pro is known for is to be able that when you sheet out, you just depower so much that you're able to hold a massive kite. And that has allowed me to go 27 meters high in every heat in Cold Hawaii because it was just, I was able to hold such a big kite down. Um, and when other guys are riding, other pro riders are riding my kite, they're like, man, it's so nice to depower and not have the pull and actually be able to edge and properly gain some speed because the idea of going high is about riding really fast, getting a nice proper pop, and then having the kite position in the right spot that if you pull the bar that you go huge. But if you have a lot of pressure with the bar fully sheeted out, it's very difficult to ride fast because you're going to lose the edge. And if you don't lose the edge, you still have to pop. So being able to have that sheet out and just depower and then sheet in and absolutely go, I think that's the DNA that we're talking about before that not many kites have, and Core, in my opinion, has yeah, just in my opinion, it's the best feeling on a bar that you can get.
Yeah, because Bride is a lot of control, right? They've got,
Yeah,
so much control with such a short bar throw. They don't have to sort of, chuck the bar miles out to get rid of that power. It feels like there's a lot of control at your fingertips whenever you need it, even in really gusty conditions, which is one of the things I really
yeah,
like about the
and
kites when we're testing them.
it definitely has less bar pressure than it used to have on previous XR models. So the XR Pro 2 has a lower bar pressure, but it still gives you such a good sense of where the kite's flying and what you're doing, even if you're upside down. Like I've had a couple times now where in bunny area I took a kicker and the kicker kind of pushed me in the wrong direction. And it didn't bother me at all because I would loop the kite and feel immediately where the kite's sitting. Whereas with a lot of these new kites coming out, there's so little bar pressure that you have to know where the kite is because you won't be able to feel it because there's no pressure on the bar unless you pull it. And after a loop, you don't really want to pull the bar to see where the kite is because if it's in the wrong position, it's not going to help out.
And what's the tuning options for riders? Is there much on the new kite that they can adjust in terms of, changing that bar pressure or adjusting how the kite feels depending on what
Yeah,
conditions they're going out in?
yeah. So we have three settings on the wingtip: a medium, an easy, and a super easy setting. I like to ride it on the medium. Um, on the backlines, you have three different settings for if you want a lot of bar pressure, medium bar pressure, or low bar pressure. my personal favorite for loops and stuff is to have it on the low bar pressure, so on the knot furthest away from the wingtip. If I'm on a 12 and I'm doing rotations and stuff, I have it on the middle one where you have the arrow where it's recommended to fly it. And then you have the CIT points for the power line bridles, let's say, where you can set it on wide loop, normal loop, and a tight loop, allowing the kite to tilt forward or tilt back a little bit more. And on the bigger sizes, I find that the kite flies a little nicer on the tight loop setting. It's just my personal preference, but that could also have to do with weight or riding styles. So you can try this kind of stuff out. But for me, it works. I really like the setting of having it on tight loop and then medium with low bar pressure.
Okay. And for someone listening to this podcast who's thinking, oh, I don't know, between, the Pace or the XR Standard or the XR Pro 2, or, which ones are those kites suited for? Like, can you just give us a rundown of, to help it easy for someone that's thinking, I don't know which one of those kites to choose. What sort of kites, what sort of rider do those kites suit?
I mean, it's quite nice that it's so clear for us. I think a lot of brands have kites that look and feel pretty similar, and it's like, you can go either way. It doesn't really matter. I think with us, it's quite clear. If you want to go very big with a decent loop, you go for the XR. If you want to go decently big or nice, but you want to have a beautiful loop that's really smooth and allows you to progress and try stuff without getting too much yank, then you go for the Pace. So it's like it's quite straightforward. You want to go very high and you're focused on boosting with sometimes doing a loop on a smaller size. That's XR. You want to loop any kind of size, even a 12 meter, but you don't need to go massive. You just want to progress in looping and having a playful kite, then you go Pace.
And obviously, the XR Pro 2's a different kite to the standard XR version. Which one would you say? Because obviously there's a big price difference in between. So how much is the performance better for the extra money
Yeah.
versus the standard Dacron version of the kite?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on your level, first of all, because you need to be able to feel the difference. For me, there's a very clear difference, but also I ride these kites for a living. So it's different. If you, let's say you're jumping and you just want to fly as high as you can, do your board offs, but you're not really looking to loop, then I would go for an XR8 and not spend the extra money to go for the XR Pro 2. But if you want to get every bit of performance out of it and you want to comfortably loop kites as well while going massive, then the XR Pro 2 is worth it. I think you don't have to be a pro to feel the difference. So let's say if you have the money for an XR Pro 2 and you really want to squeeze everything out of your sessions, it's absolutely worth it. It's just that much more stable in strong wind. If you're a light wind rider and you never get winds above 35 knots, then the question is, do you really need Alula? Because in the beginning, Alula was designed to have kites that were as light as possible. And now everyone's figuring out that what Alula really is good for and really where it really shines is if it's 50 knots. The kite, the XR, it doesn't flap, it doesn't collapse, it's so stable. And then the Alula in that strong wind gives you so much confidence to do crazy stuff because the kite's not flapping, it's not jellyfishing, it's not doing anything. It's as solid as can be. Which for me in cold Hawaii, I was never worried about my gear. Never. The only thing I had on my mind is to do my tricks and to do it as high as possible, but I wouldn't worry about my gear at all. And I think that's very special, especially if you're on a 9 in 40 knots and you're not worried about the lines or about the kite collapsing or about a wingtip collapsing. Nothing. I was incredibly comfortable.
Yeah, that's a hell of a statement there, especially when you're doing those kind of tricks at 27 meters up and the consequences are sometimes life-changing. So to have that confidence in your kit is a really powerful thing.
And it's not to talk bad about any other brands. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
not to say our kites are so stable and other kites are jellyfishing, but even comparing it to an XR8 in 40 knots on a 9, I'd much rather be on the XR Pro 2 than I would be on the XR8, just for the reason of it being so stable and giving me that much confidence to do what I have to do at that moment.
That's amazing. It is impressive. We've noticed testing, like I think when they first came out, exactly as you said, it was the weight, and everyone was talking about the weight, and it was like, why do you need a Lula in a kite smaller than a 7? Because when it's that windy, you're not worried about keeping the kite in the sky, it's just going to fly. But then, as time's progressed and the kites have progressed a bit, it's become really apparent that it is the stiffness rather than the weight that's the real advantage with these new materials that are coming out.
Yeah.
Hale, I know you wanted to get on the water. You're sat in the van watching the kiters out at Balonera, I'm sure, getting itchy feet. So I will let you go. But thank you for jumping on the podcast. Thank you for having a chat, and thank you for filling us in on the XR Pro 2.
Absolutely. Definitely check it out. But be careful, because if you test the kite, you want it. So be aware.
Excellent. Thank you. And there we have it. I hope you enjoyed that one. Another episode in the bank. We'll be back next week, and we've been recording quite a lot of these, so there's a few in stock. So don't worry, we'll keep putting them out. Tell your friends about them. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That helps us ensure that we can keep putting these episodes out for you. I really hope you enjoyed it. I did. Giel is a really nice guy, and it's always good to catch up with him. Have a great week.